Welcome to the Primal Lab. My name is Ben Sanford. I'm going to be your guide today. So today I wanted to give an introduction to what we call the Earth Lab. And I'm out here at my favorite place in the world, which is the land that I am the caretaker of. And I've lived here or owned this place, or it's owned me, for the last 20 years. And I've learned so much from this place. And this is where we run a lot of our classes, and it's been the home of many people over the years. So I thought I'd start out here because this is a place that I have a strong connection with the earth and want to help convey that relationship to you. So first of all, I thought we'd describe a few things and some definitions. So, in our training, like any training, there's often a language or terminology that goes along with some of what we're studying. So I want to share some of that as I go and make sure that we're communicating and make your experience a little richer. So first of all, I just want to review, if you didn't see my other video about the introduction to the Primal Labs, just kind of describe why Primal Lab. So first of all, primal is a word that means essential, fundamental, core. It's like the most important thing, It also means first, like prime. And so that is really referring to how we approach what we're focusing on. So if something is relevant to being human and living with the earth and abundant life, and it's universal, it's seen everywhere around the world, and it works for everyone, that's the kind of primal information, the primal things we want to focus on. So primal is also the most real and most true things we have that have been useful for us over time. And so in the Primal Labs, we're going to be focusing on these life-supporting skills and tools and practices that have always been with us as human beings, and that we will always continue to need, and even as we evolve. So these are ancient truths, ancient realities. They're simple. That's another thing about primal, is they're just they're kind of obvious. They're something that you actually are aware of at some level and you're already doing. And my hope is in this training to just make it more obvious and kind of remind you of what you already know. So the lab, lab is just a fun word. First of all, laboratory. I'm kind of a scientist by nature. I'm not actually a scientist, but I'm a self-taught scientist. And I've always had a laboratory since I was 7 years old. I had some form of a lab that was a place that I explored the universe and discovered more about who I am and the world I live in. And it became kind of a sacred place, a little sanctuary. And so, the word laboratory comes from a Latin origin. Actually, it's an alchemical phrase that means, or it's ora et labora. It means to pray and work. And I love that because it's so, it grasps both the work that's involved in developing and growing and learning, but it also brings in a sacredness or a sensitivity, a subtlety of who you are being in that process, And so, the idea of laboratory is to, have a space that you treat with intention, and a space and a time, really, when you're training. So it's being able to transform maybe your bedroom or your living room or your garage or someplace outside into a place of wonder and discovery, and to treat that time and that place sacredly. And so and with enough repetition in that manner, you'll find that it just becomes easier and easier. So it's also kind of like a temple. It's a place of deep introspection and discovery and growth. And so the Earth Lab it's like looking at our planet, looking at the Earth as, or actually one little part of that earth, or one little place within that earth, as your laboratory, as a place for you to develop a deep and powerful connection to the planet and its wonders and its ways. We have a siren going off. I don't know if you can hear that. So, and this land here is a place that's happened for me. This is a place where I've definitely spent the most time connecting and developing a relationship with the earth. So, and many other people too. So it's really become a special sanctuary, and it kind of feels like, this place has kind of a boundary around it that feels just a natural boundary, because the way the trees line this kind of circle of the field, and it's tucked in next to a creek and bottom of a hill. So it has this like natural kind of container feeling, and that's just a awesome thing. For me, it's like one big lab, So let's see. So in the Primal Labs, we're going to be looking at things as holistically as possible as well. So the training is meant to be holistic. And so what does that mean? A simple definition of holistic is basically, whatever you're focusing on or studying or approaching, you're doing that from as many perspectives as possible, and looking at it with as many layers as possible. So you're holding many perspectives about the subject. You're not just looking at it from one kind of biased perspective. You're actually opening your mind and being able to look from many places, which sheds light on it and expands your awareness. And then you're also looking at it in layers of depth. You're not just stopping on the surface. You're allowing yourself to go deeper and deeper. So a way that we've in our curriculum have formed a method to do that is by using three powerful questions, and they are what, how, and why. So when we're looking at something from the what level, we're looking at it from the what question is kind of about the content. It's the I call it the science or the skills. It's the tools and skills and the mechanics of the subject. So if we were looking at the skills of living with the earth, it would be the science and the skills of that. So that would be like fire making and shelter making and all of these tools and things, right? So the how question takes it to another place, and the how question is referring to the process of learning and growing, and that's reflected by what I call the art. So it's your training method. It's the means by which you're developing the relationship and the skills. And that in itself is a whole field of study. You don't just get skills out of nowhere, and there's a process that you have to go through. And the cool thing is the process of training and learning anything is similar. It's relatively similar. So once you understand process, you're able to apply it to many things, and you can actually get good at the process of training just like any skill. So it's kind of a meta skill. So so that is the art part of the training. So every skill can be taken to an art. It's one thing to make a tool, but to do that really skillfully into where people are just like, wow, that's a work of art. It's not just a tool anymore. So lastly, the last question is why. And the why question, you can kind of feel that is reaching deeper, and it's talking about what I just referred to as the philosophy, or answers, the philosophy end of the training. So we have the science, the art, and the philosophy. And the philosophy often ends up getting into kind of deeper, internal, kind of even ethical questions and or spiritual questions. It might bring us into a whole nother realm of consideration when we're dealing with these skills. So anyway, these Primal Labs are an attempt to give you experience and training, and do so in a holistic way that covers everything from the science and the art and the philosophy of the skills. So you're going to learn a lot of really cool, skills and techniques and tools and stuff, but along with that, you're going to learn how to learn those things and where to go from there, how to do it yourself. And you're going to get a background, a whole kind of ethical and I want to say spiritual kind of backbone to the whole thing. It comes with this whole container. So it's very powerful and very transformative. And so that's how the Primal Labs work. That's how we do it. So this lab is the Earth Lab. The Earth Lab, again, is focusing on allowing the Earth become like the temple of creation. It's a space that you, a time and a space and a way in which you develop a relationship to the Earth. Now, am I talking about, the dirt or, the planet or whatever? By Earth, that's a very general statement. I mean, technically, I'm Earth, right? I'm material, and that's really it. It really, the thing is, all Earth is a similar expression of material going through this process, right, and obeying certain principles and laws. And so, the cool thing about that is the whole planet, or all of our creation or reality, because it does respond to and form around the same principles, and it's going through a similar process, any part of the Earth, any place, can give you insight into every other place. So if you get to know one place really well, you will have insight into every other point in creation. Got some serious sirens going on today. So the Earth Lab is going to be your portal into all of creation. And again, it's going to be a time and a place that you decide that you dedicate to unlocking the mysteries of creation and developing these skills of living with the Earth. And that's really where I want to bring your attention to is, a lot of times these skills are branded as survival skills, which is true, and it makes sense that way. But it leaves kind of a certain impression, and there's a certain type of relationship to surviving, and often paired with fear or pain or difficulty or, desperation. So I want to open that up further and think of it as living with the Earth. And this is really, when I describe the where this comes from, the teachings that this comes from, that'll make a lot more sense. So, but think of it as living with the Earth, and with the Earth, by the way, right? Not just living on it, not just using it, but living with it like a relationship. And so that's what we'll be cultivating. So as a human being, the way we live with the Earth is through these life-supporting skills, and specifically with life-preserving skills, and the skills of providing and preserving. So being able to harvest what you need from the landscape in a respectful way and integrate that into your life as tools or food or whatever it is. So, most of what we're going to be talking about from a survival perspective or living with the Earth perspective has to do with tools. The first subject, or one of the main subjects or categories we're going to be looking at is a tool set or a skill set called tracking. And you could see tracking, I actually wrote a little definition here, it's hard to define this, but tracking could be seen as our capacity to perceive with useful perspectives and interpret useful and meaningful patterns in the presence of otherwise overwhelming mystery. What? So what does that mean? Tracking is the ability to take certain perspectives, useful perspectives, and observe your reality, perceive your reality, and extract from that useful and meaningful patterns that carry information for your continuation, for your well-being, right? So that's a really general way of talking about tracking. I understand that, and I have a whole class on tracking, and tracking will be about half of what we focus on in this Earth Lab, because tracking ends up being the language of creation, or the language of the Earth in a way. It's the ability to with using your senses, gathering information, maybe it's a bird call, or maybe it's the way a plant's growing, or a certain weather pattern, or some disturbance on the ground, or some sign from an animal. It's being able to gather that information and interpret it, let it become part of a story that means something to you, that you can use to better adapt, inform yourself so that you can be the adaptive creature that you are and fit into the environment better, and maybe respond to that bird call, or prepare for the weather, or gather from the earth, the plant, or the animal as needed for food or tools or whatever. So tracking is this very natural, something you already do. This is not a new thing for you, but we're going to make it conscious. We're going to make it a powerful, real tool. So that's half of our training in Earth Lab, and tracking covers everything from, again, meaningful patterns and understanding relationships around you, and fits you into your environment, but it also allows you to blend in with your environment and become part of it, because you understand, how to fit in. Just like if you were at someone's, or some event or some party or something with humans, you assess the situation, you gather information, you see how you kind of need to adapt and behave to kind of blend in with that context. Otherwise, unless you just want to stand out, which sometimes you do. But so tracking allows you to blend in, and we think of this maybe as camouflage or invisibility, but it's this ability to move with the landscape and not disrupt it, and that's a very powerful thing, especially if you want to know what's going on, So, so the other half of the training is focusing on the primitive living skills, or skills of living with the earth, or survival skills. And in this portion of the training, most of what we're going to be focusing on has to do with tools. Now, by tools, don't just think rocks and hammers and screwdrivers and that kind of stuff, and knives. Yes, those are tools, but there's also one of the most powerful tools, actually, for example, is not a tangible tool like this thing right here. It is a mental capacity. It's your ability to manage your state, your attitude. So from my teacher, Tom Brown Jr., what he calls it the number one tool of survival is basically your attitude, your ability to manage your state. And you can imagine why. If you're in a challenging situation and you just freak out or allow yourself to be distracted or overwhelmed or fearful, rather than pointing your focus where it needs to be to adapt and succeed in that moment, you could be a liability, and you could be harmful for other people, and you could also just be absorbed by the landscape. So, get lost or make a bad choice or whatever. So, many of the tools we're going to be focusing on are the tangible skills, and they're amazing and beautiful, and many are going to be mental skills as well. So the areas of physical skills we're going to be covering are going to be pretty basic, but I don't mean like boring, I mean like primal. So basic meaning essential, and being fundamental. So there's a very structured and methodical way in which the skills are organized in this training. It has to do with how we're going through our core curriculum actually throughout the year. So it has to do with the seasons and the time of year and all that stuff. And it kind of has to do with your own process of development too, how you're developing as a tracker and how your connection to the earth is developing. So those are all taken into consideration as well. So there is a flow of skills that we'll be covering, and that flow, that sequence, is essentially based on the development. It's based on your order of needs and your order of skill development. Okay, so if you think about your order of needs, it's kind of straightforward. You need air sooner than you need water, for example, right? But there's a whole sequence to that that's very powerful and very important that we'll be talking about. So some of the things we'll be covering though is basically how to make shelter, how to make fire, how to tend fire, how to use fire, cook with fire, and the many uses of fire. Fire ends up being one of the super tools, actually. So, and many other tools, how to work with stone and sticks and work with wood and fibers and plants, make containers, and pretty much everything you can think of that you might need in a living wild situation. So most of the training is going to focus on primal survival skills, which means these will be tools that the earth, you could get directly from the earth without any other tools. So it's kind of an interesting place of, starting from nothing, is really our perspective or our assumption in all of the training. And fortunately it is training, so you don't have to rush out there and just, really suffer and to figure this stuff out. You're going to do this in little sequential progressive steps. We're going to show you how to work through it and develop a relationship at every step that feels comfortable. I mean, there'll be little edges to push and stuff and little challenges, but that's the beauty of training, is we can simulate reality. It doesn't have to be real. So we want to make sure you're surviving while you're learning how to survive. So there's, at some point I'll be talking about a distinction between tools and skills as well. So as I mentioned, some of the tools, there will be skills that go along with that. And the skills are a little more comprehensive. Skills of, for example, harvesting in a sacred or respectful manner. The skills of conserving resources and energy, skills of adaptation and improvising and maintaining, and there's all kinds of hidden skills that are built into survival, which are actually, in a way, kind of really what makes survival work. So the tools are useful, but as you know, you can have a tool and either not really know how it works or not know how it fits into the situation. So we want to be able to adapt and use our tools in many different ways. So the main tool we're going to be using is our mind. So the number one skill is attitude, it's awareness, and what you know. So all of this leads to a deeper connection, and I really look forward to leading you through that process. And in that connection, in that process, you will find that you naturally awaken this internal role of both. It's kind of a twin role of caretaker and nurturer of the earth, as well as protector and guardian of the earth, or keeper of the earth. And that just happens instinctively, as you connect and begin to form, or you already have it, reawaken this bond that you have. You'll find that, just like anything, as you know something and care for something, as you develop a relationship and something becomes important to you, you naturally want to care for it and protect it, And I think that's just a beautiful side effect, and is something that we desperately need in our world right now. So really look forward to going on this adventure with you, and thank you for your time and listening to this intro. Of course, if you have any questions, this is going to be, it's a lab, so you're welcome to be contacting me and asking questions. I'm going to throw out random kind of little pieces that I feel like would be useful to kind of bridge different segments. But for the most part, we'll be going through this piece by piece, lab by lab, and I hope that you come with us and learn these skills and bring it into your life. So again, thanks for watching and joining me out at the land on a beautiful day. Look forward to our next session. Take care and keep going.